So you want to read more books, do you? Well, that's pretty good news because today I'm going to go over 5 tips on how to read 50 plus books a year, or your money back guaranteed. Okay, you're not really paying me anything, but if you were, go ahead and click the like button because I'd really appreciate it. And after a year, if you don't read 50 books, just unlike it, okay? Money back guaranteed, right? So I'm going to go over 5 tips on how you can read more books. And one thing just to note here is that I'm just happy alone that you want to read more because a lot of people don't read at all. I think it's just amazing when more people read the amazing stories that authors are putting out nowadays. And I just want more people to experience it. So for you to want to read more books, I am super happy to hear it. So here is how to read 50 plus books a year. 5 steps. Okay, the first step, we're just going to dive right into it. Number 1 is to calm down.
What?
Okay, you might be saying, Aaron, what the heck do you mean by calm down?
How dare you tell me to calm down?
Well, I really come at this from 2 different angles. Number 1 is that I don't want you to read just to read to get a certain number in mind, right? You might have a goal to read 50 books. Don't read just to read and get through the story as fast as possible, because if you're not absorbing the material, if you're not absorbing the story, you're not experiencing it. So at the end of the book, if you don't know what happened, you don't know the main character's name, did you really read it? And did you experience the story? Probably not. So when you start reading, I don't want you to go with the intent of just finishing a book. I want you to experience the story. Calm down and don't fret about the number of books you want to read. Just concentrate on actually reading and experiencing the story itself. And on the other side of the token, for calm down, is that I don't want you to compare yourself in terms of other people reading and their reading journeys. Because sometimes when you're scrolling through Twitter, you're going on TikTok, or you're going on whatever social media app, you see someone say, hey, I just read 20 books in the month of July. When you see that and you're like, oh my God, I haven't read 1 book this entire year. I don't want you to fret or worry yourself that, okay, you need to read 20 books a month, because sometimes people read at different speeds or have different things going on in life to where they can read more than you can. You just trying to read 1 book a year is great because a lot of people don't read at all, right? So when you see these posts saying, all right, I'm at 200 books this year so far, and you see yourself as, okay, inadequate, don't worry. Just focus on reading books and experiencing the story. All right, step number 2 is going to be set realistic goals. So I come at this one as well from 2 different angles in terms of setting goals for your books, the amount of books you want to read a year, or even a page count, right? At the beginning of this video, we talked about reading 50 books a year. That can definitely be a goal for you to read, 50 books a year. But also, if you're just getting started into reading, maybe something that you should look into is setting a page count goal a day for you. For a lot of people, sometimes setting just 10 pages a day is a good goal to hit, because 10 pages, doesn't sound like a lot. It sounds something that you can actually obtain and you can get to every single day. No matter what the book is, if you read 10 pages, guess what? You just hit your goal and you get that hit of dopamine, man. You hit 10 pages, and then guess what? After a certain amount of time, you might go above 10 pages, and then you're going to go to 20 pages, 30 pages in a given day, and you're already breaking that goal, and maybe we should set a new goal at maybe 50 pages. So for me, for instance, I set a goal for myself to read 50 pages of a book a certain day. It could be a few different books. I just want to read 50 pages of something, right? It can be 25 pages of one book here and 25 pages of another book here. I just want to hit 50 pages. And over time, those 10 pages a day, those 20 pages a day are going to lead up into a full-length novel, and pretty soon you'll be reading and finishing books in no time. I think this one's really important for new people starting out to read, because sometimes when you're just starting out in reading and you're getting into that very first book, it can be a little bit daunting or a little bit overwhelming to where you're just seeing a wall of text, and if you're not used to reading and you go through that first page and it feels a little bit taxing, that can be normal for a lot of people. So just setting that 10-page goal, it allows you to have a certain page count in mind for you to hit, and maybe even break it over time. All right, step number 3 is going to be to diversify the type of medium of the books that you're consuming. Right, we all know that a book can come in a hardcover edition, right? In terms of having a hardcover. Also, paperbacks, right? We have paperbacks. They're floppy sometimes. They're easy to hold usually. And those two, I think, are always going to be in people's mind in terms of reading books because, this is what a book looks like. But also, think about this. E-readers, right? We have these things now called Kindles and Kobos and whatever else you have, in a digital format that allows you to read and consume the book. So I would try to experiment a little bit in terms of which medium serves you best. It could be a mix of all three. For instance, sometimes when I'm reading multiple books at one time, I'm usually reading one paperback of something physically that I'm holding in my hand, and then I'm reading something on my Kindle as well. But also, in adjacent to this, medium also entails audio. Audiobooks, I think, are a fantastic way to get to your reading goals over time because you're not sitting there looking at a page and consuming it with your eyes. The story is being spit into your brain through your headphones or earbuds or whatever it may be. I love audiobooks. I think they're a really great way to up your book count over the year. It also allows you to consume books in a way to where you couldn't be doing it if you had to read it physically because you can be listening to an audiobook almost anywhere. I mean, you could be doing it at work. It might not be the best thing to listen to a book at work if you're supposed to be working, but you can. Usually for me, I always have an audiobook that I'm listening to, sometimes two, depending on the time of day that I'm listening to the book. Usually I have one focus book that I'm listening to. Then I have a side book that I listen to on a separate occasion. Like usually when I'm walking my dogs, I listen to a certain book when I'm doing that. And when I'm working out or in the morning, I'm listening to my main focus book for audio. So that could be three different ways that you're taking on books at the same time in terms of reading one on your Kindle. Also, you can read it on your phone sometimes. Like if you're in a commute, you could be listening to a book, or you could be reading it on your phone or your e-reader. And if you're at home, of course, you can be reading the physical edition of the book. And then boom, you are consuming books right then and there. Almost anywhere that you go, you have books accessible to you. So I'll just recommend trying out these different formats and seeing what's best for you. And also, I know a lot of people say that audiobooks are sometimes a little bit hard to get into. I think you need to find a narrator that really just jives with you because sometimes there might be a book that you're interested in and the narrator just does not do a good job in terms of immersing you and pulling you to the story. So I'd recommend sampling a few books and seeing which narrator actually pulls you in so that you're engaged throughout the read. Alright, hit number 4 is to not be afraid to DNF. So do not finish. Now some people, when they get into a book, they start reading and once they start, there is no stopping in terms of they have to complete the book. But what if you get to a certain point and you realize that you are not enjoying it? I don't want you to suffer your way through the book just because you have to finish it. Don't be afraid to stop reading it. If you're not enjoying it, don't continue, okay? Not every book is for everybody. And if a certain book is not just working for you, it's not clicking for you, why put yourself through it when you could be reading something that is? Especially if you're just now getting started into reading, I don't want you to power through a book that you don't enjoy because it could be putting a bad taste in your mouth in terms of reading overall. And then if you come out of the book not having a good experience, you might look at books and say, I don't want to go through that again because you had a bad experience. So do not be afraid to not finish the book. I want you to read something that you enjoy and that's something that captivates you, something that engages you. So if you don't like Red Rising, stop reading it, okay? Not every book is for everybody. Find the book that works for you. Alright, tip number 5, the last one that I have right here, might be the most important one, and that is consistency. If you're not consistent in trying to hone in on your skill, you're just not going to achieve it over time. Just like working out and trying to gain muscle or trying to learn how to skateboard, if you're not consistent with it, it's going to be very hard to get to a point to where you're an expert at it. In our case, we're trying to read more books. So if you're not consistent and you only read here and there with no schedule, I feel like it's going to be really hard to read more books and eventually enjoy it. In my case, when I started out reading physical books, I tried to read every single morning, and eventually I got to a point where that became a habit. You wake up, you get your coffee, you get whatever drink that you need, and you start reading right there in the morning. Now, the morning might not be the best time for you to read, but find that sweet spot that allows you to continue reading and be consistent, because the more you read, the more pages you get through, and eventually the more books you get through, right? So if you're not consistent, it's going to be really hard to read 50 books a year. It's going to be hard to read any number of books a year, and then you're not going to hit that 50 book goal count that we set out early in the video. And I don't want you to have to take your like back, man. I want to keep that like here in the video. So be consistent, stay calm, and don't compare yourself to others. Set realistic goals, experiment with different mediums, try audiobooks, try ebooks, and do not be afraid to DNF. Read the book that excites you and engages with you. And that, my friends, is 5 steps on how you can read 50 plus books a year. And if you're already a reader watching this video, what are some additional steps that you have that other people can take a look at? Let me know in the comments below. Have a good one. Keep reading. Peace.